The Conference of Champions continues to get better as USC is in the news today for returning Isaiah Mobley, the brother of Evan Mobley, obviously, and the son of Eric Mobley, an assistant on the USC staff. But Isaiah is back for his junior season. He had 9.9 points per game last season, 7.3 rebounds per game for the Trojans, and really stepped up last year in a few games in the NCAA tournament game against Kansas, round of 32, where they just absolutely ran Kansas off the floor. Isaiah had 17 points and 8 rebounds, and he was really good from three. In the loss to Gonzaga, he had 19 points and 7 rebounds. That's where they lost in the Elite Eight. They just weren't as good as Gonzaga. They were missing some pieces. They just were not as good of a team. But Isaiah Mobley had a pretty impressive season, but he was also inconsistent at times. You look at a 5-game stretch he had in late February and early March, he had, a combined 22 points in 5 games. If he's going to be the guy next year, that cannot happen. He needs to consistently score 15 every night. USC is not as good as they were last year. Obviously, you lose Evan Mobley, you lose Tajidi, you lose your 2 best players, so that's to be expected, but they need Isaiah Mobley to be the guy next season. I don't see this team living up to expectations unless that's the case. You do add Boogie Ellis from Memphis, who had a very good sophomore season for the Tigers, 10 points a game, 38% from 3. He's going to likely run the point, which is why I think he ended up transferring from Memphis, but also Ethan Anderson's going to be in the mix to run the point. But when you look at USC's roster, you have those 2 guards. You have Isaiah Mobley. You return Isaiah White, who was a solid shooter last season, came in from Utah Valley. He is utilizing the extra year of eligibility. Shot 36% from deep. I had a few games where he just absolutely erupted. Against Oregon, he had 22 points in the Sweet 16. He just was not missing in that game. And there was a few other games like that last season where he just was hitting everything. Again, was a little inconsistent at times, but can they get a consistent performance from the 6'7 wing? If so, he's going to be a massive part of what the Trojans do next season. And then when you look at the roster, you also get Drew Peterson back. He was a good piece coming in from Rice. You also kind of return and kind of add Reese Dixon Waters because he barely played last year. He reclassified into the class of 2021, and it was one of those situations similar to what Mac Etienne did from UCLA. Came mid-season because their high schools were done playing, so you might as well, if you can graduate, go to college and get that experience early on. He played a little bit, but not any substantial minutes. I think this year he could be more of a piece in the USC rotation. And I think that could be pretty solid if he's a good piece off the bench. Max Agbonkpolo, I think, is a potential breakout candidate. I like his skill quite a bit. He's long, he's athletic. He's not a great shooter, but he adds a lot on the defensive end. He's versatile, so I think he could be a solid piece. And Joshua Morgan, another guy that didn't get much run last season, but I would suspect he gets a fair amount of run this year. The Long Beach State transfer was obviously behind Evan Mobley, a 6'11 big man Morgan. Just, you're not going to play over Evan Mobley, who's going to be a top 3 pick in the NBA draft. But at Long Beach State, Morgan was one of the best shot blockers in the country. He blocked 2.5 shots per game, 8.4 points per game, 6.1 rebounds per game. Essentially redshirted last season. Only played in 7 games, 2.6 minutes in those 7 games. He played in, a mop-up role. He just wasn't a big piece because Evan Mobley was there. And had it been a typical season where red shirts actually mattered because last year is the free year of eligibility, Morgan probably would have redshirted. So Morgan this year is a guy that I feel like isn't being talked about because he just kind of disappeared last year. But I think that was by plan for USC. I think this season is going to be the year where Joshua Morgan establishes himself on the defensive end. He adds a little bit of weight, was 195 pounds, weighed in last year at 6'11". That is super skinny for a guy who's supposed to play the 5. They need him to bulk up a little bit, and I think that could be where Joshua Morgan steps up, adds some weight, adds a little bit of versatility scoring-wise, can finish more than just in front of the basket, and I think that will be a big piece for the Trojans if he is able to be that piece next season. I'm a little lower on USC than most, I feel like. I like the roster. Isaiah Mobley needs to be that guy who can score 15 a night, But overall, I still feel like they're kind of missing a piece. I'd like to see them maybe get another guard from the transfer portal. Maybe Boogie Ellis just becomes an all Pac-12 guy, which is certainly possible, like Taj Edey was last year. And I wasn't super in on USC last year either. I just feel like I thought there was something missing from last year's roster. I didn't foresee Taj Edey being one of the best shooters in the Pac-12, one of the best scorers in the Pac-12, and that's exactly what he was. So maybe Boogie Ellis will be that guy this year. Maybe Reese Dixon Waters will step up and be that kind of guy, or just, bring consistent performances as a freshman. But overall, there's still some names in the transfer portal. Maybe Jaden Shackelford. He would definitely change my perception of this USC team because he adds another scorer. I think that would be a very perfect fit for USC, but there's options that they could entertain to bolster the roster a little bit. They're an NCAA tournament team next season. I don't think they're a contender to win the Pac-12, but they are a very solid team, and Isaiah Mobley is the star of the roster. Andy Enfield will make the NCAA tournament for the second consecutive season in 2021-22. Thanks for checking out the video, and have a good one.